The International Monetary Fund, IMF, have warned that the rising price of essential goods will deepen poverty and food insecurity in Nigeria despite improved macroeconomic stability, even as they maintain growth forecasts for the economy in 2026 and 2027 at 4.1% and 4.3%. Now, the IMF projected Nigeria's economy to expand by 4.1% in 2026 and 4.3% in 2027, while Sub-Saharan Africa is expected to record growth of about 4.3% in 2026 and 4.5% in 2027. Now, commenting on Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa, the IMF said that growth forecast can indeed not only be reflected, but also be seen to indeed be different from what it is, especially as it concerns different other reasons that will indeed impact negatively on the economy. But anyways, irrespective of it, and many will feel it's indeed a shock to say that Nigeria, upon the growth forecast that the IMF have projected, will definitely fall deep into inflation and indeed see more pain as it hurts those that are indeed doing more. But the big question remains, what with this report coming at a time when many Nigerians are already going through difficult times and having more strain on their finances, it looks as if there's more higher days ahead. But what should the government be seen to be doing to help reduce impending hardship? Well, this and more will take center stage on the show today, and that is IMF report on more economic downturn for ordinary Nigerians. And that's what we're having as a major discourse today on the show. We're looking at that very report, especially as it predicts a more economic hardship for ordinary Nigerians in the coming months ahead. But anyway, we're right here in the studio, and we'll be joined by no other person but an economist all the way from Abuja. And we're talking of no other person but Mr. Ben K. Adams. He's of the Ben ST Global Foundation, joining us all the way from Abuja. Good morning and welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Okay, well, anyway, the IMF has again projected that we might indeed find more Nigerians falling into the poverty line on the account of the high cost of essentials. And when they talk about essentials, they're talking about food, services, and all put together. Are you surprised with this? And what do you feel is the reason that we're having more Nigerians undermining they have a robust growth forecast for Nigeria put at 4.1%?
All right, thank you very much for that question. So the IMF can actually be said to be speaking from the two sides of their mouth, if that is any positive impression. They have said that the GDP growth, which is focused at 4.1 in 2026, is achievable. And then 4.3 in 2027 is also achievable. Now, but despite all of this, they also highlight the fact that there is going to be increase in the numbers of Nigerians that will be thrown into poverty. Now, they had also explained that further by letting us know that one of the major reasons why more Nigerians will be thrown into poverty is because of the continual rise in the prices of essential goods. And we all know that it takes a living man to say he's a rich man. So if a person cannot meet probably his daily cost of livelihood, then irrespective of whatsoever outlook that is said that GDP is showing currently now, if it does not mean that Nigerians are going to be living better than they were before, then basically it is a problem. So the summary of the highlights from IMF highlights the fact that our macroeconomic reforms are actually giving results, right? And this actually includes the fact that there is an improvement in our exchange rate management, just like we all know. And then there is also an improvement in the management of the broader economic reforms, which is helping to stabilize the economy, basically. Now, this is the macroeconomic outlook. But the microeconomic outlook is still actually not being managed well. So major concern, like I have mentioned earlier, is that part where the cost of basic necessity is always on the rise. why will IMF actually say that Nigeria GDP is growing? What are the bases for them to come to that conclusion? One of them, for me, is the fact that there is an improvement in the production. We all know that there is a reduction in oil theft now, crude oil theft. There is now an increase in production, which basically means that Nigeria is able to earn more. Recently, it was said that Nigeria, under this administration or thereabout, have been able to grow their domestic, what do you call it now? They have been able to grow their reserve from about 9 billion to about 40-something billion. So if Nigeria was, able to achieve that, then we can say kudos to the efforts in the oil production management. Then there is also that aspect where our telecommunications seems to be doing well. That's the telecommunications sector. Now, you walk on the streets today, you discover that out of 10 people on the street, at least 8 of them have a smartphone. At least 7 or 6 of them are on internet. So, you see, money is being made from these aspects. All right. Then we talk about the financial services. Due to the fact that there is increments in our GDP and increment in a lot of outlook and the prices of necessity, you discover that Nigerians are not able to meet their needs. So our financial services also grow or improve by the fact that most Nigerians, especially today, are going to take loans. A good number of them are going to take loans. So the financial sector is seeing a growth. We talk about the agriculture also. With the efforts that this previous government and this government have been playing, especially with the Anchor Borrower project, there is also numbers of growth in our agricultural sector. The challenge actually is after production, how do we get it to the end user? So cost of transportation now affects this. Then we talk about technology. These aspects or these things is also one area where Nigeria is doing very well. We talk about the advent of money points. We talk about the advent of e-transact. We talk about the advent of OK and so on and so forth. All of these fintech introduction into Nigeria market and then exporting the same thing to African nations and other nations is a plus for Nigeria and is actually anymore. So these are the areas majorly where you can say by the macroeconomic managers, these are the things they are feeling, and they are feeling, yes, Nigeria is going to meet its target of 4.1 for 2026 and then 4.3 for 2027.
Mr. Benke Adams, you've given us a clear reason why they feel our growth rate will be 4.1 and 4.3 this year and next year. But irrespective of that, we are still in the woods as it concerns how ordinary Nigerians live day to day. Last 2 months, I'll talk about only rice, which is more a staple food. We used to know that the baskets, especially in the south here, was sold for 6,000 naira, but now it's being sold for 6,500. Yeah, you talked about the foreign reserve. As of June 18th, our foreign reserve was 51.03 billion United States dollars, which is good, which is robust. But I'm only concerned with such beautiful forecasts. Why are we still hungry? And why is it that more Nigerians are expected to go to bed without food in the coming weeks ahead?
All right, thank you for that question. And what I had said in passing earlier on, I think I will still need to re-emphasize it. There are several factors that are contributing to Nigerians becoming poorer. And one of them that I mentioned in passing is persistent food inflation. Now, if you remember, I said, now this is tied to the fact that there is also high cost of transportation. All right. Now, this can be said to be spearheaded. All right. Persistent food inflation is as a result of not enough food in the market for buyers. Now, when sellers discover that there is more demand for very scarce resources, they will definitely increase price. So the question will now be, why is there more demand for a scarce resources? It's because of the fact that insecurity has also affected a good number of the agrarian areas in Nigeria. So that's it on one side. Then on the other part of it is also this high cost of transportation. Until recently, when I think the Minister for Petroleum had a meeting with oil marketers, they were still selling, the price, the pump price of fuel, the same price it was when crude oil was still very high. All right, when the price of crude oil was above $70 per barrel. Now we have heard that it has come down, but it's not reflecting in the market. So until that meeting took place, I think prices never went down. So let's assume that prices of transport will continue to go down. Then this will also reflect in the prices of food in the market. Some other things too, which also have to do with seasonal food. For instance, we all know that this is not the season for tomatoes. So you go to the market today, and an average tomato that you will buy for 200 naira is now being sold for 2,000 naira. Why? Because this is not its season. All right. So basically, in Nigeria, we have to face it for a while until when it is now its season, and then there is more stock in the market. And that is something that we see almost every year. Then another aspect that also affects the microeconomy is the part where we continue to have rising electricity and energy costs. You know very well that in today's Nigeria, you hardly have power supply from the authority. Most Nigerians have resorted into using solar. And as a result of this, you know how much a solar panel costs, or probably the battery. So a business that is set up on green energy will not provide services at lower price. So that is also very important. Then we also have the weak purchasing power. Nigerians have actually been, how do I put it now? That is also tied to the fact actually that the growth in wages is not commensurate to the growth in prices of goods and services in the market. So Nigeria majorly, have poor or weak purchasing power. So you have a Nigerian who has been earning, say, maybe a 50,000 naira in the last 6 months. He goes to market before now, and then he buys tomato for 1,000 naira, or probably for 200 naira rather. All right. He goes to that same market today, and that same tomato is for 2,000 naira. I mean, more than 100% increase. So you discover that there is weak purchasing power, and this is also tied to the fact that wages are not growing at the same rate that inflation is growing. I think we have a situation where wages are growing as inflation is growing, then definitely the purchasing power will actually be enhanced. But in today's Nigeria, an average civil servant is expected to earn 70,000 naira as minimum wage. Now, how many of such civil servants can buy a bag of rice with a 70,000 naira minimum wage? So definitely, these are the factors that have contributed to how Nigerians have actually become poorer, despite the fact that our GDP is growing.
Thank you so much for that very elaborate explanation. I know it will quell the nerves of many Nigerians that are already asking that very question. But let's look at inflation. Now, for the month of May, we've not seen that of June because it might be expected to come out next week, which is always the middle of the year, middle of the month. But we do know it's projected to be between 15.9% from the National Bureau of Statistics, knowing that it's 15.7% in May. That's what our inflation is said to be. Now, you made one very salient point, and you talked about the issue of transportation, which many would attribute as a reason we're having that high inflation after we've had consecutive reduction in our inflation rate. But my next question, sir, is the issue of fuel will always come first in all of our discussion. But Nigerians are worried that why did the federal government not do more when the crude oil was being sold at $120 per barrel in the last 2 months? It is by our record on Dialogue that this country made about 5.13 trillion under 2 months of the war between the United States and Iran. And yet there was no indeed subsidy to deal with the rising costs that Nigerians were buying fuel up to 1,350 naira per litre. Would you say it's a failure on the part of government in not trying to do that to help deal with the shocks attributed to the high cost of petrol?
All right, so I think if I am to talk based on what this current government is doing, we will remember or call to heart that they also have a program. All right, and one of the programs is the cash transfer. What do they call it now? I'm trying to remember the name they call it. Compulsory or so. I think it's compulsory cash transfer program. All right. If they have already put this kind of program in place, and this program is being enhanced, all right, it is targeted to the poor of the, to the poor of the poorest or so. And if that is what that program is meant for, and government is using whatsoever they got as a windfall from the increment in crude oil in the last few months, then it will have been said that by now, what we are facing is not what we'll be experiencing. But we all know sometimes government have very wonderful programs, but executing such program is always the problem. But I will say that if they are hearing us now, one of the things that we advise is they should expand this targeted cash transfer program. All right, and this will help to ameliorate this current situation. We are actually not in a irredeemable position now, because it is not that Nigeria is not earning. All right, Nigeria is earning, but unfortunately too, Nigeria is using most of our income to pay debts. And then the current government is also trying to make sure that they keep a very good face. We made so amount, but now we are in our foreign reserve, but now we have grown into so amount. I mean, who does a money in bank account pays if he's not able to use it to sustain or keep himself alive? So I believe strongly that these are areas that government needs to look at. Inflation, we all know the statistics is there, all right? But what efforts we need now from the government, based on what IMF has said, is to be intentional in driving the effort towards redeeming or probably ameliorating Nigerians from from poverty. And this has to be intentional, and it has to be pragmatic also.
Now, yes, you just highlighted what the government is not doing that you feel they need to do. But many Nigerians will say, for government, sometimes it's easy said than done for most of the policies being instituted by most administration, especially these. But let's look at what Nigerians need to do at the moment. It has been estimated that about 62 or 63% of Nigerians are already in poverty. That's about 141 million persons are already poor. And many Nigerians will say that's alarming, but with IMF recent projection, that might increase to about 157 million persons that will go poor at the end of this year. Now, in your own honest advice to Nigerians, what do you feel that they need to do to help deal with the rising cost of these essentials, to help augment, so at least they can go home with, even if it's not a complete belly fill, but something in their stomach that will keep the kids from crying in the night? So what advice will you have for ordinary Nigerians on what they need to do to keep themselves going under this projection?
Well, like you said, for ordinary Nigeria, and I don't think there is any ordinary Nigeria anywhere, because the economic situation or the economic challenges is affecting everyone. Prior to now, we have seen people who usually go around with convoys of cars. They have actually had to drop a number of those cars, and then they go on to one or two that they need. So except for anyone that the government is paying for fueling of that car or servicing of that car, they are the ones that you might see that are still driving in convoys now. But whatsoever the situation is now is affecting everyone. So what will I want to say to Nigerians out there? I think very much this is that time that Nigerians have to be, we have to imbibe financial intelligence in a time like this. And that is what is required in a time like this. And when you talk about financial intelligence, it basically means that you must cut off non-essential from your expenditure. You must also cut off any expenditure that you know will not add value to you. Nigerians are to also look at possibilities of ensuring that areas of compulsory, what you can call compulsory daily expenditures, like sending your children to school, paying rent, need to be reviewed. You don't have to send your children to schools where you will have to begin to pray and fast before you're able to raise school fees. All right? You don't have to also compete with your neighbors because your neighbors are taking their children to this very fine, wonderful school. You also want your children to be in that school. That for me is an unnecessary throat-cutting competition. Then you also want to talk about rent. Do you want to look at if your landlord keep increasing rent every year with a 50,000 or 1 million? Then you need to go look for places where rents are a bit stable, and then you are sure in the next 1 or 2 years, these landlords will not increase this rent, or probably the rate of increase will not be compared to what you are experiencing now. So that's on one part. And another part, which I think Nigerians are already used to, is that Nigerians no longer do any house visitation now. All right? I stay in Abuja, and I can tell you that for people in Abuja, one of the best ways we have learned to reach out to each other is through calls. Unlike when you're in a community, a communal area where you need to go and knock your neighbor's door to say, it's been 3 days I've not seen. How are you? How is the family? Nigerians, especially those in Abuja now, do more of calls. They build that communal life. They build that communal life through reaching out, through calls. Because if you have to take a transport, or you have to transport yourself, drive your car to a place, you want to count how much it will cost first. All right? Imagine I want to go and check somebody I've not seen for a while, and to fill my tank, to fuel my car for that procession or for that visit, it will cost me about 15 or 20,000 naira. That person will even appreciate me giving him 10,000 naira than me burning fuel of about 20,000 naira just to go and say, hi, it's been long, I've not seen you. All right. So that is one of the things Nigerians need to do. And I believe strongly that we as long as we don't give up, the days ahead of us, we keep getting better.
Okay, well, anyway, it's a good advice, but anyway, it's good that I've not seen some persons for a long time, and I now have reasons to tell them why I've not seen them, so they don't get any angry with me. But let's leave the anger side of it and look at the government itself. Whether we like it or not, like that projection has said, more Nigerians will definitely go hungry at the end of this year. Now, I know there's no quick fix to this, especially as it concerns the policy of this government. This government is saddled with the responsibility of putting policies that they feel at the long run will benefit the economy of this country. Now, in your own economic assessment and advice, what advice would you give for government to help deal with the cushion of having inflationary trend chop out a large chunk of incomes coming to Nigerians? What advice would you give to this government if, like you said earlier, they are listening, which we know they are always listening to dialogue? Let's have it.
All right, thank you very much. One of the things that government globally do in a time like this is to identify areas where they can provide subsidy. Recently, the figure for electricity subsidy was set to, for the last quarter, was said to have grown from 200 billion to about 300 billion, if I'm not wrong. And that shows that government is still doing something. Unfortunately, we are not feeling the effect like we have said earlier, or have said earlier. The electricity is not even there. Nigerians are resorting to green energy, using solars and what have you. So you now wonder, who are they really spending that subsidy for? All right? Maybe for government establishment and so on and so forth. Now, taking away from that energy subsidy, there are other areas. For instance, we've had situations where government have been able to provide food, especially food, at subsidized rates. Currently, one of the things that government keep doing every time is to provide fertilizer at subsidized rates. But unfortunately, the prices of fertilizer keep going up. Currently, it is said that for a bag of NPK, Nigerians pay about 50,000 naira. If that number is correct as of today, all right? Nigerians pay about 50,000 naira. Now, this is something Nigerians used to pay about 3,000 naira for some years back. That is before, in the days where, before Buhari came into government, late Buhari came into government. Nigerians pay around 3,000, 6,000 naira for a bag of fertilizer. But today, they pay about 50,000. So what do you think will happen after farmers have spent that much and bring their goods to the market? It will still be very high. So we should have tentative and intentional approach, or probably a systematic approach towards subsidizing fertilizer. If government can help to bring fertilizer down to less than 50,000, say maybe around 20,000 or 10,000, I am very sure that the cost of food will also go down. All right. So these are areas where government can help. Then I had also mentioned earlier on that government needs to also expand this target cash transfer. All right. This compulsory target cash transfer, the government needs to also expand it. Currently now, it is assumed that it is people who belong to the ruling parties that benefit from it. But all Nigerians have a stake in this country, and Nigerians, the government should begin to look at how to reach out to the true poor of the poorest, all right? Who should be the one that the government should be meeting with this target cash transfer in a time like this. So I think these are the few suggestions I would love government to take, steps that I would love government to take.
Thank you so much for that advice. But I feel it would be unfair if we do not pick your brains on the issue of corruption, because whether we like it or not, if some of the things you've talked about, if monies are meant to deal with these issues are being channeled or siphoned away from the coffers of the government, will always be in problem. And I want you to also look at is the issue of corruption, especially as it concerns our budget, which is the primary source of our sharing formula as it concerns department agencies and other parastatals. Recently, we had a 1.23 billion naira that was marked to be given to a fake agency, the PFC, IPC, and many are saying the investigations are ongoing. But I want you to really give us or talk about what the government need to do, especially as it concerns dealing with loopholes when it comes to those that are indeed draining our common purse. What should this government do to be held more accountable and make Nigeria feel that indeed the money that is coming for the nation is meant for the nation and not being siphoned by some few?
Well, corruption is actually something that we all know is actually a global challenge. Corruption is a global challenge. But every government worldwide try to play certain rules, try to also try to come clean when it comes to war against corruption in their government. Right, for Nigeria, I think one of the things that we'll need to do in a time like this is to strengthen institutions, strengthen anti-corruption agencies. We all know that today it is assumed that the anti-corruption agencies are being used to fight what seems to be political enemies. All right, and if that continues like that, then it will rubbish the existence of such agencies. So I will actually encourage the government to make the war against corruption to be much more transparent by ensuring that these agencies have free hands to work. All right. Till to now, somebody had commended this government when the former minister of I think Science and Technology resigned his position, though not that he was fired, all because of the corruption that was noted around his certificate, right? And it was assumed that he went free until recently it was said that he was arrested. So for what was said that this government is weak, I think that they can also use as a fluff to say, no, we are making efforts. Now, these agencies are also to be well funded, and they are to be empowered to enforce the law without any political interference. Then government need to also ensure transparency in public spending. All right. Like we have talked about the target cash transfer. All right. It's something that is assumed that is only given to people who belong to a particular party because they are the ruling party. All right. So I think there needs to be more transparency in all of this. Then another aspect of transparency in government is where government budgets, procurement process, and contract award should be an open thing. It should be open to scrutiny. All right. We have been hearing that some people have been contributed, like the former chairman of the what do you call it, Code of Conduct Tribunal. He's currently he's currently passing through the legal process now. Why? Because it was found out that he gave contracts and money from those contracts were transferred to his wife's account. Now, these are things that government needs to begin to throw out so that people can know that truly these things are working. Then, one major important improvement also to this public spending is digital procurement system. Putting in place digitalized procurement system and regular publication of how money is being spent. And then before you know it, Nigerians will know that there is no room for any fraud, no opportunity is given for fraud. Then government usually we know that have very poor accountability system. But there's a need for a government who want to come through, who want to show to the citizens that they mean well for the citizens and they are doing their best to improve their livelihood, to enforce accountability. Yeah. All right, they should ensure that there is an enforcement of accountability. Then there is also this need for government to reduce human discretion by using technology. Globally today, people have moved beyond using individual assumption. You know, you let somebody just sit down and he wake up in the morning and feel, look, I don't like this person's face. Let him not do this or let him not be in that position. Our system should begin to employ the use of technology. All right, electronic tax payment, which is what the government has already started. They are working towards that. Then digitalized licensing and permit system. All these ones that bureaus are the ones that are stopping cars on the road and what are they are going to the market to go and collect levy. Let all of this process be digitalized so that the money can be going into one purse. Then the treasury single account too need to also be improved. There should be transparency in all of this. Then let's also talk about the procurement system. Government should take steps to ensure that the procurement system or platform is digitalized, and then there's an electronic process to all of this. Finally, I think that what will also help us is for government to ensure that whistleblowers are protected. All right. The reason why people don't step out to say this happened or that did not happen is because they feel that by the time they give out such information, they are not protected. Their lives are in danger. Their families are in danger. So these are things that I think. And then because this government should also promote ethical leadership. So these are the few things I think we need.
Mr. Benke Adams, I would really want to really thank you so much for giving this advice to government. But I doubt if they will send you any money on account of consultation. But anyway, all we need to send you is a big thank you for doing justice to this and adding your voice to that very concern being raised by the International Monetary Fund when they said essentials are indeed pushing more Nigerians deep into poverty. But anyway, it will not be poor for us to say thank you so much. We're richly blessed by your insight into the issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, anyways, you do know that's more like a wrap on the show today. But we'll always insist that the show does not end with that very discussion. Just like what our guest has said, the government needs to do more, especially as it concerns dealing with the poverty being projected by the International Monetary Fund, saying that almost 157 million Nigerians might really go deep into poverty base at the end of this year on account of the need of getting essentials that have now skyrocketed on account of some of the things our guest said, which include the increase in petrol price, which has now risen to 1,185 as this morning. But you do know just a couple of weeks back, it was being sold for 1,350. He also talked about the issue of having less farmers go to farm on account of insecurity. But anyway, we're also hearing reports that the issue of insecurity is being given a heavy blow, especially by this administration in recent time. He also talked about the issue of proper cash transfer as a means of helping the lesser privileged. And but the question remains, do the less privileged do have accounts? Well, anyway, those questions will